we have Timothy Weiskel, who is the Research Director of Cambridge Climate Research Associates and a current faculty member at Harvard University. He holds a doctorate from Oxford and is author of Environmental Decline and Public Policy, Pattern, Trend, and Prospect, a work based upon his testimony to the United States Senate in support of curbing carbon emissions. He is co-founder of the Climate Talks Project and lead convener of the Cambridge Climate Research Associates. Weiskel consults in the private and public spheres to create training programs aimed at developing the necessary transformations we must all undertake to move to a post-carbon-fueled world. Give a round of applause, and warm welcome to our panelists. So first, we're going to start off with hopefully a slide presentation from Professor Weiskel, and we're just going to kind of take us through and look at climate change, what Professor Weiskel does, and then bring us right back and get more into some meaty substance and hopefully some commentary from the audience once we have time. Dr. Weiskel.
I wanted to focus particularly on what's at stake in Paris and the whole question of the youth voice and the human prospect. Because if the youth voice doesn't get voiced in Paris, the human prospect is not very bright. You can see this by looking at something as simple as a temperature map. You'll see the dates at the bottom of it, and you can probably figure out when your grandparents are born, or maybe your parents, or maybe even yourself, depending upon how old you are, and how much has changed in recent time, whether you know it or not. This isn't a matter of a committee meeting or a vote or anything else. This is going on. This is the temperature record that's been recorded. Notice particularly what's happened in the life of youth that have been born since, say, 1980. Many of you in the recent moment have not experienced a climate which was the average climate of the 20th century. If you're under 27 years old, you've never experienced a year that was the average year of those of us who grew up in the 20th century. It's that stark, it's that fast, and it's that out of control. What we need to do is start to look at this as a huge problem from afar. What we have is the only inhabitable spaceship in the known universe that is physiologically quite ill, can be illustrated, in fact measured, has been, just like you'd see the monitor at the end of any hospital bed, or the kind of TV presentation of the heartbeat. The metabolism of the Earth can be and is measured at all these stations around the world where the CO2 concentrations are measured daily. And on an annual basis, you can see there's an up-down, up-down, up-down pattern, and sawtooth pattern, but there's also a trend, right? So it's true, yeah. CO2 increases, it decreases. It increases, decreases. But over time, this whole line is moving up in terms of parts per million, right? This is the pulse. And this is not a model. This is the instrumental record, representation of 10,000 data points put together by the scientists here for a very quick and effective means of looking at what's happened in our lifetimes, certainly mine, when this record starts, but it can go back further, and does, when they jump to proxy records, like the concentration of CO2 in ice cores long before humans were in the modern civilizational mode. We're up here in terms of parts per million. The average of the Earth's system is way down around here. This is the procession and recession of ice ages in the last 800,000 years, which can be measured in terms of its CO2 concentrations by the bubbles that are left in the ice. So what scientists do down in Antarctica and up in Greenland. In the last 800,000 years, the average is down here. You think it's cold outside now? Take a look at what's coming. I mean, this is not a joke in a way. We can actually learn a lot And people say, oh yeah, ice ages have always been, they come and gone. Yeah, that's true down here. But what happens when you alter the atmospheric carbon, push it way up here? Guess what's coming? It's a convergence of crises that can be seen in a graph over the last 100 years or so, from 1900, 1925, 1950, 1975, 2000, shortly after 2000, in your lifetimes, is a convergence of peak oil starting to decline, population continuing to increase, and heat budget of the Earth sort of massively increasing in this short period of time. This was a graph done in 2008, and basically it's continued since then. So much so that we've begun to have second thoughts about first principles. As Sir Nicholas Stern put it, free market advocates have constructed a global system that has led to what Sir Nicholas Stern called the largest, the greatest, market failure the world has ever seen. It's time to rethink these principles, perhaps, as modes of governance. The Union of Concerned Scientists, along with the Bulletin of the Atomic Scientists, has actually moved the minutes to midnight forward because of that kind of crisis. Now, here's where I think the UNA can play a key role, because you've got to ask yourself, we're a fossil fuel dependent civilization, independent of what nationality we are. Our modern civilization is dependent on fossil fuels. We have to get to being a solar sustainable system. You'll admit, there's a bit of a transition, right? Transition studies are what's now in every discipline, every department, every university. And that's where the UNA can really help, because we can start to play the key role about asking what comes next. You get the comic representation of it in the New Yorker every once in a while, and so while the end of the world scenario will be rife with unimaginable horrors, we believe that the pre-end period will be filled with unprecedented opportunities for profit. This is true. They speculated on it in Wall Street. In fact, my own university is engaged in a rather tragic encounter on this point, where the students are trying to say to the president, get out of fossil fuels. And the president won't even agree to sit down and talk with them. It's staggering. This is going on while 1,400 cities in this country alone are going to be raising sea levels to the point that they're uninhabitable, including where I am, where the feet get wet. In a Category 3 hurricane, there's one little dam that keeps the ocean from coming into MIT, Boston University, Harvard, in one fell swoop. I mean, we are 1 degree away, as it were, in the veering of a hurricane from Haiti northwards, from being a New Orleans. Category 3 hits Boston, that's what it's going to look like. Gondolas will be the mode of transportation. This is not new. In 1992, the youth started pointing this out and making very powerful statements about this.
Hello, I'm Severin Suzuki, speaking for ECHO, the Environmental Children's Organization. We're a group of 12 and 13-year-olds trying to make a difference. Vanessa Suddy, Morgan Geisler, Michelle Quigg, and me. We've raised all the money to come here ourselves, to come 5,000 miles to tell you adults you must change your ways.
Okay, I'll let you look up the rest of the speech and listen to it when you have your copious spare time. But I want to indicate that that was a polite statement in 1992. It's gotten more strident ever since. And in fact, if you follow these things, you can see why. Take a look at this one.
The scientific community released a report that proves, beyond a doubt, that the Earth is getting warmer. This global warming is caused by things you grown-ups do, and by the things you don't. If drastic measures aren't taken soon, by the time I grow up, there won't be any fish left in the sea. Rainforests and clean air will be a thing of the past. The polar ice caps will be gone, oceans will rise, entire countries will disappear. Life will change in ways you can't even imagine. There could be famine, worldwide epidemics, life expectancy will be lower. And we're not just talking about the future. We're talking about my future. But this is no surprise. You adults have known about this for years. And though you could have done something about it, you haven't. You can say, it's not my problem. You can say, I won't be around in 50 years. But from now on, you can't say I didn't know. Starting today, the lines are drawn. You have to choose sides. Either you're for my future, or you're against it. You're a friend, or you're an enemy. I may just be a kid today, but tomorrow will be different. This is the last time I'll be talking to you adults. You've had your chance to fix this problem. Now we have ours. We won't be cute. We won't be patronized. And we will not be denied our future.
Now, the conclusion is simply this, and the youth have to make this clear in December in Paris. There is no planet B. We only have one Earth. We only get one chance. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Weiskel, for that presentation. I'd like